Hello everyone, Ace here, and today I've got something very special for you all today. So first of all, let's talk about the new Tropico game that came out only a few days ago. Well, for a start, I have to admit that I'm a long-time fan of the Tropico series, since the very first game in 2001 in fact, so I'm very familiar with how these games actually play. And that being said, I may have to do a review on this particular title after a while, but we're not actually going to be talking about Tropico 6 on its own today. Today we're actually going to be discussing one of the most insane articles I have ever seen, written specifically by Jeremy Peel for VG247, and simply titled, "I brought about Brexit in Tropico 6, and it went as well as you'd expect." Yes, I'm not kidding. This is an actual article written by a journalist who is trying to use Tropico 6 as a quote-unquote simulation to show how Brexit would actually bring about the end times for the British people. So let's dive in and see just how backwards and insane this particular gem of an article actually gets, shall we? One of the principal worries around Brexit is the idea that we haven't planned enough for it. Specifically, we're worried about no deal. The eventuality where the UK doesn't come to an agreement with Europe about what our relationship should be from now on, and instead just sort of drops out of the Union, like a jar of bologna sauce, through the bottom of a thin plastic bag, splashing disruption all over our shoes. If that happened, we'd have border checks suddenly reintroduced, serious interruption to trade and transport, and glass in our bolognas. So yeah, right from the very beginning, this article starts with fear-mongering over how bad a no-deal Brexit would actually be, showing quite clearly where this journalist's true priorities actually lie when discussing this particular article, which is very amusing when you consider that this is a game journalist and he should therefore be covering video games and not politics. The UK government has begun its own no-deal war games, Operation Yellowhammer, a great name for a Rainbow Six expansion. But there's no reason we shouldn't run our own simulations, especially when there's a brand new tool to test our theories in, Tropico 6. I'm going to manipulate the fictional Caribbean island nation to bring about no-deal Trexit and see what we can learn from it. Okay, so now I'm going to have to explain why Tropico 6 cannot work as a true simulation of any first world economy. The first and easily biggest problem is the fact that Tropico 6 in no way tries to model a free market economy. In fact, Tropico was always primarily run by a command-style economy, and the same is true here. As the players assume the role of the Tropican government themselves, they have absolute authority on what buildings get built, what goods get produced, and how much their workers are paid to produce these goods. This is the exact antithesis of the principles of a free market economy, and by extension the principles upon which the UK's economy is built. So no, Tropico 6 cannot be used as an accurate simulation of how a no-deal Brexit would affect the UK. I decide to begin the game in Tropico's colonial era. At this point in the country's timeline, it's beholden to the whims of a foreign power, the Crown, and pushing for its own sovereignty. Sovereignty is a very important piece of the Brexit puzzle. On the day of the UK's fateful referendum in 2016, a poll by Lord Ashcroft found that nearly half of those who voted to leave the EU did so mainly because they believed decisions about the UK should be taken in the UK. I absolutely love the fact that this particular journalist decided to pick the colonial era, the era that is chronologically the furthest away from the modern era where the Brexit issue is actually relevant. And not just because of this hilariously pathetic attempt at a comparison by this journalist, I also have to mention some of the implications that this suggests considering how Tropico 6 mechanics actually work in that era. For a start, the player is absolutely not allowed to build high schools or hospitals or colleges or clinics on his little tropical colony. He only starts getting those after he gains his independence, which, considering this particular journalist is using Tropico 6 as a quote-unquote simulation, means that apparently he believes that the EU is holding back the British government's ability to provide healthcare or education to its own people. And as hilarious as a suggestion like that actually sounds, it only further demonstrates how particularly wrong this journalist is when he tries to use Tropico 6 as a simulation. As such, I tell the Crown to bog off and leave us to govern ourselves. Unfortunately, as a colony, a declaration of independence doubles as a declaration of war, and Tropico has no army to speak of, so I quietly hand the Crown $10,000, 2/3 of the country's savings, to quietly forget about us instead. Tropico's equivalent to the Vote Leave campaign, the revolutionary faction, delivers a rousing speech. Today we demand, politely, to be free. And so we are free from foreign interference and all those pesky export deals that sustained our economy. amazing. Even in this guy's no-deal Brexit simulation, he doesn't even have the nerve to actually do a no-deal Trexit, thus completely defeating his own arguments right then and there. If you're going to try to use this game as a simulation of a no-deal Brexit, then at least do a no-deal Trexit. It's not like it's a big deal anyways. The Crown only sends a handful of guys after you, so all you need to do is build a handful of forts and you win. I've done it multiple times myself. At the time of our grand split, our primary export to the Crown was fish. But a cursory look at the potential new trade deals reveals that nobody else is interested in our soggy, googly-eyed goods. I do manage to sign a contract for the delivery of 70,000 units of corn. Bushels? I don't know, but I'm new to the business, so that's something. Only trouble is, corn has been the main source of sustenance for our local Tropicans until now. They're going to have to eat the fish we're not selling instead. Nobody wants to buy the rum either, so that'll help ease all those greasy meals down. This particular paragraph is easily my favorite of the entire article because it demonstrates just how utterly incompetent the journalist is at playing Tropico 6, and I'm going to explain why. His main problem here is the fact that he's only been producing a handful of goods to actually trade with, as well as to provide for his own people. I shouldn't have to explain this, but it's generally speaking a terrible idea for a nation to rely on only a handful of goods for export, and even worse if you're only supplying your people with one type of food. For a historical example, just look at Ireland circa 1846 and see what happens when you try to supply your people with mainly one type of food. It never ends well. And this brings me to why this single paragraph completely destroys the entire point of the article. Because since this journalist is using Tropico 6 as a quote-unquote simulation of how Brexit would handle, it also demonstrates by his own logic that he is essentially incompetent at matters of basic economics and politics. And yet, the whole point of his entire article is that you follow his advice on basic economics and politics. It doesn't exactly take a rocket scientist to locate the basic fundamental flaws within that train of thought, if we can even still call it a train of thought anymore. In fact, there's no real point in me even continuing having a look at this article. I've basically just destroyed it using its own logic. So I'm actually going to be stopping it right here. I think you know very well what my thoughts are on this article. It's just utterly insane that someone thought this was a genuinely good idea. And contrary to what this author intended, it in no way actually makes the Brexit movement look bad. In fact, I would argue that it makes the Remainers look utterly incompetent by comparison. Now, for those of you who actually want to read the article in its full, I will be providing links to the description below. And it is a very amusing read, I will admit, for all the wrong reasons. But in any case, this has been Ace. I hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.
Well, I suppose you did rather well, for a bunch of savages.